Autism and facial recognition. This study focused on the difference between facial recognition patterns in autistic and allistic individuals. Allistic is a descriptor for someone who is not autistic. The difference they are studying is fixation on the eyes and mouth and the relation to facial recognition. This study can answer the question of why autistic people have typically poorer facial recognition than allistics. Children, adolescents, and adults with autism tend to have a decreased attention to the eyes. Autistic children and adolescents fixate on mouths more often than allistic children and adolescents. Autistic and allistic individuals both fixate on the eyes more often than the mouths. Autistic people fixate on eyes for shorter bursts than allistic individuals. Previous research has found that autistic individuals will study the face in a different manner than allistic individuals. It's been proposed that this could be a reason that autistic individuals have difficulty with facial recognition. Children, adolescents, and adults with autism have been found to pay less attention to the eyes and more attention to the mouth than allistic people, although both groups focus more on the eyes than the mouth in general. There is evidence that these differences could be related to age. Further, there is evidence that facial recognition is determined by what individuals fixate on in terms of facial features. The study hypothesized that typically developing or allistic individuals and autistic individuals would fixate more on the eyes than the mouth, but it was predicted that the autistic individuals would fixate on the eyes less often and for shorter lengths, and would fixate on the mouths more often and for longer lengths when compared to allistic individuals. It was also hypothesized that the fixations on eyes would positively correlate with performance on the Cambridge Face Memory Test, and fixations on the mouth would negatively correlate with performance. In other words, performance would increase in fixations on the eyes and decrease with fixations on the mouth. The final hypothesis was that the number of and duration of fixations on the eyes would negatively correlate with the symptom severity in autistic individuals. In other words, the fixations on the eyes would decrease if symptom severity increased. Participants for this study were autistic and typically developing or allistic children, adolescents, and adults. All participants were IQ tested, and no significant differences were found between the groups. Participants were shown images of neutral Caucasian male faces. During memory phases, participants learned the target faces. During test phases, participants had to select the target face, the face they had learned, from two distractors. Eye positioning was tracked throughout the phases to determine what region of interest, ROI, participants fixated on during the phases: the eyes, the mouth, the nose, etc. A fixation was defined as a sustained look within a certain angle of degrees, 1, and for a certain amount of time, 100 milliseconds. Fixation was measured in duration and count. Duration is how long a participant fixated on an ROI. Count is how many times a participant fixated on an ROI. All the participants looked at the faces for similar lengths. All of the groups and ages made more and longer fixations to the eyes than to the mouths. The study predicted that autistic individuals would make shorter and fewer fixations on the eyes and longer and more fixations on the mouths than the allistic individuals. The study found that allistic groups made more and longer fixations on the eyes than the autistic groups. Allistic children's fixation on eyes was significantly longer than autistic children. Groups were not so different in adolescence and adulthood. The autistic group had an increase in fixations to eyes from childhood to adolescence. The goal of the study was to determine if patterns of fixation on facial features was related to facial recognition difficulties in autistic individuals. It was found that autistic children and adults fixate less on the eyes than allistic children and adults. Adolescents were found to have similar fixation patterns between both autistic and allistic groups. These findings support the theory that the eyes are important to facial recognition, and that lack of sufficient focus on this area may lead to difficulties in facial recognition for autistic individuals. Overall, while autistic groups did focus more on the eyes than the mouth typically, they fixated on mouths more than the allistic individuals did. In the allistic groups, fixation on the mouth is maladaptive for facial recognition, but could potentially be compensatory for autistic individuals, something used to offset the difficulties. The sample size of the subgroups in follow-up analyses were small, which limits the generalizability of the study results. Also, the data was cross-sectional, which means that developmental trajectories couldn't be analyzed and compared. There is a chance that the participants had received interventions meant to enhance social interactions by increasing focus on the eyes at some point. This study highlights the importance of age and task when attempting to understand the differences between autistic and allistic individuals' fixations on faces or other stimuli. The work also highlights the importance of developmental changes and compensatory processes in visual processing for autistic individuals. Overall, while individuals with autism may fixate on the eyes and mouth at different rates than allistic individuals, there's more to facial recognition differences. It's not necessarily so simple as just saying that autistic people have trouble with facial recognition because they don't fixate on the eyes as much as allistic individuals. There are other factors to consider when trying to understand this topic. Some of them are developmental changes, compensatory processes, and even environmental factors.